Everyone, thanks for joining me again tonight. With me is Rob J. Hayes, author of many, many books. Uh, but his main
Absolutely.
series right now is the War Eternal books, if I'm not mistaken. And you have a new book coming out in that series soon, Rob. So,
Yeah,
would you like to just tell us a bit about yourself and about that series?
sure. So I'm Rob J. Hayes. I'm a British fantasy author with a few sci-fi books as well. I've been doing it for how many years is it now? I'm closing in on 10. This is 9 years. This is my
Ten,
ninth year of being a
ninth
published
year,
author.
really? Which was your first book? Because I was thinking about this earlier today. I thought, oddly enough, both of us being Brits, we've never had the opportunity to meet in person, which is a bit weird after all this time. Not that I'm aware of anyway. And I was thought, how long has Rob been doing this? And I thought about as long as I have because your Takes a Thief book was in the SPFB, like the self-published
Yeah.
blog of two, I think, and that was
It was, yes,
I want to
yes.
say 2016, but I don't know when it came out exactly. And but you're saying even longer. You've been around for 9 years. So what was your very first book?
So my first one, I don't have. Have I got one of the books? Oh no, I don't have. I don't actually have the book with me. So we'll just point to that artwork again.
Right.
That's the artwork for the Heresy Within, which is my first book. Although I mean, I say it's my first. I released my debut trilogy all on the same day. Um,
That takes rapid release to a new level.
it
Right.
does, yeah. It was a different time back then. Back in 2013, basically, and the Kindle landscape was a bit different. Um, and as I'd already written all three books, I just thought, you know what, let's just release all three on the same day. And I released the first one for as cheap as I could at the time, which was 77 pence and 99 cents, and then priced the other two at 2.99 basically. So there was this whole sort of thing going. It's like you can get the entire trilogy for less than like a couple of cups of coffee or whatever. Uh, which seemed to do quite well. But yeah, that's so yeah, it's 9 years because it was 2013. I published that first trilogy.
So all three books in the day. Okay, that's pretty crazy. And
Hmm.
that worked out well? Did that allow you to jump to full time, or was it a little while later?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, it was a bit of a different time, and I think I got quite lucky. I managed to trick some Amazon algorithms or something.
Yeah.
Um, and I sold a hell of a lot. I mean, like it was beyond. I didn't. I had no expectations when I went into it really, and I ended up selling something like 60,000 books in my first year.
Wow.
So,
Jesus.
um, yeah, it was kind of nuts. So I just thought, well, this is it. I've made it. So I, I quit my job and decided to write full time, and things slowed down a lot after that. And yeah, there was a few hard years, but I've just about managed to keep at it.
That's wild. Like in the first year, I mean, do you think it was just that putting them out all at once like that? Do you think that did it, or do you think it was just a bit of divine intervention? I mean, that is quite that's quite unusual. I'll put it that way.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. Yeah, I think releasing all three books in one go and them just being there, I think that definitely had something to do with it. Maybe the price point of doing them quite low. I think uh, when I released them, I think it was just as season two of Game of Thrones had
Hmm.
released as well. So there was a lot of people devouring epic fantasy at that point.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I lucked into it there. I think it was mostly just luck, to be honest. And I couldn't replicate it if I tried. But I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. No, it sounds. I mean, that's. I've never heard of a story like that before. That's definitely a cool one. Like, you hear people doing the rapid, doing it on 1 year or over a few months, but never 1 day. It's just there. It's a whole. That is a different. As you say, it was a
Well,
different time, right? It was a different
it
age.
was, and I had no
Yeah.
idea what I was doing. I literally had no clue what I was doing. I mean, the original artwork was it was terrible. I
Because
paid a
I was
guy.
going to say, I feel like that the cover on the right hand side as I see it now, I feel like I saw that later.
Yeah.
So that's what maybe has confused me. So that did you re-release it? Did you repackage and completely re-release, or did you just change the cover?
Yeah, I just changed the cover first. So yeah, the first covers I paid a guy like 80 quid for all three covers, and then me and my dad sat there on Photoshop and knocked up the typography. It was terrible. And then when they did well, I thought, you know what, maybe I should pay for some new covers. So I got hold of an artist. I found him on DeviantArt, and I got him to do that bit,
Yeah.
which I absolutely loved. And I did hire him to do the other two books as well, but then he just vanished from the world. No idea what happened to him. I hope he's okay. So I never got books 2 and 3 done, the artwork for them done by him. But then about a year after I released the trilogy, I got picked up by an indie publisher, indie publishing house basically, and signed with them. So the whole all the books got repackaged and everything. Um, and then they got repackaged again when I left that indie publishing house. So they've been through a lot of different variations over the years.
Right, right. Yeah, because I just have this feeling that I see the date on Amazon is like 2017 or something, but that would make sense if they've gone through some
Yeah,
various iterations.
it was the
A bit of a
re-release
journey.
after I left my publisher in 2017, basically.
Yeah, quite the journey. So, all right. So we'll step away from business for just a second. Like, tell us, you've got multiple series, but but they all seem to be. I hesitate to say grim dark, but slightly dark, a little bit irreverent. Wait, what's your style? What would you pitch as your style?
You see, that's just it. I don't think they are actually all that dark. I mean,
Yeah.
bring this one back in. This nice little prop.
Ah,
This
yes. Yeah,
is
yeah.
the cover for "It Takes a Thief to Catch a Sunrise" without the typography on it. And this certainly isn't a dark novel by any account. It's a steampunk heist caper basically, with a little bit of romance thrown in there as well. Really, so that one's very light-hearted. And I don't know. I wouldn't call like the Mortal Techniques books grim dark. I wouldn't call them that dark at
No,
all.
they don't look dark to me. I guess it's the
No.
other ones, but yeah.
I mean, my debut, the Ties That Bind trilogy, that was definitely dark, and I would say that's grim dark. And I know the War Eternal gets called grim dark as well, but again, I don't think it is. I think it is quite dark in tone, but not grim dark. I don't think there's that sort of whatever it is that says this is a grim dark book. It's grim and gritty and all that. I don't know. So for me, I think that I have a style that it can be a bit irreverent. It's definitely usually some darkness and a bit of sort of like black humor in there, that sort of thing. Gallows humor sort of style. But um, I like to vary my styles with what I'm writing across as much as I can, because part of the thing I love to do as an author is every time I write a new book, I like to do something very different with it. It's a different book, and I'm going to use a different style, and everything's different about it. So I don't sort of focus in on this is my style, this is how I will write the next book and everything.
Yeah, you sort of have several things going on at once, right? You're not just so you get to shift around, and that works for you. That kind of doing one type of story in series, and then you move into another book, and you're alternating your books. You're not writing like six in one go of X type of thing. You're kind of shifting around. Do you find that quite refreshing? Does that
Yeah,
help?
I mean, it certainly can be. I know last year I was literally writing two books at once. And in the morning I was writing this sort of like this quite dark book, and then in the afternoons I was writing this a bit more hopeful and upbeat progression fantasy novel. So it was just like it was a really nice change. In the morning you're like okay, and then you get to sort of like lunchtime, you're like I'm a bit tired of writing in this one. You pick up the next one,
Right.
you're like yeah, back into it with a fresh mind. And it's that a change is as good as a rest sort of thing, I guess.
I mean, impressive to me. I just about get through the one at a time. Nice
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't recommend writing two at once. It was, I think it broke me a little bit, to be honest. Just about managed it.
I spoke to Ben Galley recently, and he had something similar going on. He said, yeah, it almost broke him as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not feeling too bad about sticking to my one at a time, even if it is slow. Um, Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the way to
So
do it. Well, the most healthy way to do it is to focus on one and then uh, take your time with it, and also to have downtime as well. I think that's part of the problem. If you switch from one book to another and you're like you feel refreshed and you go straight at it again, but if you're not giving yourself that downtime to just relax, the sort of like the stress of it kind of builds up and can knock you down with it.
yeah, it's hard. It was hard enough. I will take the go for breaks advice. Although I had one of those days where it was a little bit relaxed, and I felt guilty for it. I'm sure you've had those days.
It's horrible, isn't it? You just
Yeah, you
you
think,
feel like
oh, relax, then you feel bad. Oh,
I should be working, I should be writing, I should be doing. Yeah, no, you need to take that time to relax. But yeah, I don't know if it's just part of sort of life in the current uh, ecosystem, or it's just some sort of trick that you play on your brain. So you're like, I must always be working. But yeah, I've fallen into that trap myself.
so I mean, 9 years ago, it feels like, as you say, a different age, a different time. But what was it that led you to self-publish that first series? Like, what attracted you to doing that rather than taking it through a traditional process?
Well, I did actually submit it to a few agents, that first book, to a few agents, and got either negatives or no response whatsoever. And I'd not really thought about self-publishing it at all. And then there was a friend of mine that just sort of came out with it, said, "Publish it," and I thought, no, how do I go about that? So,
Right.
and I just sort of looked into it, and it wasn't getting any bites from traditional publishers. So I thought, why not? Let's just do it. Um, so that's kind of why I did go in that more standard route of, yeah, okay, I did try to get a traditional publisher and nobody wanted me. Um, so I think a lot of us kind of did it that way, but these days it's kind of like, well, you, I feel that you have to look at a book and try and make the decision: is this the sort of book that would do well in the traditional sphere, or is this the sort of book that would do well in the indie sphere? Because I do believe that they are two largely different markets.
Yeah, I think they have organically diverged over the last 10 years or so through a number of means. But yeah, I think that you're talking about the audiences from Amazon not necessarily being in certain circles as well. I think it's diverged organically, probably due to what's being published by both sides, and then the people attracted to those sorts of books just have tilted towards one direction or the other. With some rare exceptions, there's going to be those big breakouts that just pull everyone in
Oh yeah.
every so often. But yeah, but it's certainly interesting. I know what you mean. Like some books you feel will just be better suited for a certain style,
Yeah.
and
I mean, like I believe that you get a lot more of the traditional sort of classic style fantasy these days in the indie sphere, because
oh yeah, oh no, for sure, absolutely.
traditional publishers have just moved away from that sort of thing. They are looking for, sorry, other sort of things at the moment, but there's still a vast audience that want this classical fantasy. So they sort of like, yeah, organically just move into, okay, well we'll read like the indie side of things instead. Um, so I think, yeah, it just happens with the way that traditional and indie have just moved apart. But there is still crossover, of course.
Yeah, it reminds me, but I don't know how much you know of MMO games and these sorts of things where like there's like that older style of playing a big MMORPG uh, that's just been very much developed into a different direction, and people yearn for the older stuff. So there was loads of private servers and things, and then some of the companies caught on and released legacy servers. Now you have like two versions of the same game running: the sort of live, like, modern one, and the kind of classic one. And it does, very different audiences in some respects. Like it's almost a similar thing where just there's like a style that gets moved on one side, but we have the internet now, so as people know there's an option out there. There's a way to get what they actually want, maybe harking back to something that they preferred, you know. And so, if your book slots into something that isn't strictly on the shelves, so to speak, there's no reason why readers aren't out there that are going to enjoy it.
No, I mean, I think that pretty much any book that you can sort of like think of and writing that, you'll find an audience. Like, it may not be a huge audience, but there'll be an audience out there. I mean, I see some of the books that sort of like grace the Amazon page, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds bizarre and totally not for me, but hey, it's
It's
got
working.
readership.
Yeah.
So there's definitely yeah, you definitely find an audience. But yeah, I and especially with the idea of those sort of classic sort of like stories and the way that they're written. Yeah, there's always going to be people wanting them. I know that every now and again I read like a more sort of classic take on fantasy, and it's almost like coming home again. There's that there's something comforting about it. Um, and you just don't really tend to get that in the sort of trad sphere these days. So yeah, most of the classic stuff I read, or the classic field stuff that I read is indie. Like, I read Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer last year, which had that sort of very comforting classic feel to it, and really enjoyed it. Um,
Well, it's done
so,
amazingly well. I think we're all
yeah.
anticipating the second one of that coming. Not, I think no pressure, ML, you get it right, but there's a lot
She'll
of
get it
people.
out when it's ready.
Yes, when it's just perfect.
Yes.
No rush from us. We're not going to rush anyone. Do you ever feel pressured yourself to kind of rush a little to get something done to get or do you ever get that? Does it ever get? Does it ever affect the book for you? Like, do you feel like I need to get it done by this point? I need to get this thing out. I
Yeah, I
don't. You
mean,
don't spend the same time as you'd like. Like, does that ever get to you?
it does, especially these days. I've got this really bad habit where I tend to start a series, and I'll write like the first few books or whatever, and then I'll be like, I'll take a break from this, and I'll write another series, and then I'll come back to it. And it's led to the point where I'm like, okay, how many series do I currently have on the go? Like 4 or 5. And I know that there are people who are waiting for books in this series, and I'm currently writing that series. And so there's definitely a bit of pressure there where I'm like, I really want to get this book out to you, but I'm currently writing something else, and I've got to. And yeah, I know if I spend too long looking at the big picture, looking at, okay, I've got this to write and this to write and this to write and this to write, it starts getting on top of me, and I can start feeling really overwhelmed by it. So I tend to try and not, and just be like, okay, I'm going to focus on whatever I'm writing at the moment, and try not to
Yeah,
think of everything that I've still got to write.
good problem to have.
Yeah, I suppose. I've got no problem with having enough ideas, just enough hours in the day to write them. I sometimes think, yeah, I need like 2 more of me, and then we could maybe write all the books I want to write.
I mean, every book, you especially if you've got that audience there that's hard won. I mean, it's difficult to find those readers. And you've been around for long enough now. What have you seen change in terms of? I guess I hate to use the term marketing, but just getting yourself out there, getting yourself visible, and your books visible. What's been the biggest change that you've noticed over this whole time?
I think it's got harder, basically, especially over the last few years, because it's trying to be heard over the noise. And as more and more books are being released and more authors are taking to self-publishing, there is a lot more sort of noise, just sort of this wave, the rivers, just there's so much water flowing down it, and be like one drop in it, it's kind of hard work to to be that one that stands out, basically. And you can do paid advertising, but that's getting more and more expensive. And um the organic ways of doing it are getting harder, because there's so much more, there's so many more books. It's too much more noise just everywhere, and standing out just becomes that much harder. So yeah, it's become harder, and I don't have any answers to it, unfortunately. I wish I did.
Yeah, well, no one has the magic sauce. Otherwise, they'd be bottling it.
I
But
think the only
what
answer I can have is be more Will White.
be more like Will White. Was it you I said this meme to? No, it was David. I was speaking to David Estes something, and he made some allusion to Will White like this too, and I said, "This should just be a meme that we have in the author community, you know, like some problem, just be more Will White, you know, just that kind of, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I've got a book releasing. How do I get it released? What would
just
Will
be
White do?
Will." What you seem to have done very, very well is be like a sort of super social online, you know, super social online with other writers and other bloggers and members of the sort of community there. You seem to have really uh, uh, got quite a good rapport with a lot of different people across a, you know, a wide space, from the grimdark stuff to more traditional stuff. Was that just something that happened naturally? You know, you're just interacting normally and it just sort of built up from there? Or did you set out to be like, no, I want to actively make these connections and
There's a little bit of both. I mean, it certainly started with just I started joining like online groups, like Facebook groups, and talking to people on Twitter, and stuff like that. And there's definitely a some sort of targeted sense to it in that I I reached out to bloggers quite a lot, especially in the early days, and said like, if if you're a blogger and you're willing to review indie books, how about one of mine? Um, so I definitely reached out to people like that, but most of it has just been more sort of organic by participating in these online communities, um, as much as I can. There's somewhere I'm still very lacking. I should probably get on Reddit more and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been quite active on Facebook mostly, but that's dying off a bit. So these days, I think I'm mostly just on Twitter, interacting with other authors and bloggers as and when, because it's fun. It's nice to make those sort of connections and talk to other people who are struggling with the same sort of things, or are going through the same sort of things, or who are reading the same sort of things, basically. Um,
yeah, I mean, totally. That's why I like doing these chats. I like to try and be more active in it. I like to go to the conventions when I can, hoping to do some more in the States, you know, time and money allowing and everything. It's really important, and you never know what's going to come out of it. But there's a question in the from our Q&A channel from Samuel Kaufman that kind of relates to this. He's asking, like, it's kind of part of this organic, community spirited stuff. You know, what made you decide for indie authors to do as much as you have done to promote other people? Because if I'm right, you list books that are coming out from the indie world on your website. You usually have a Reddit post to that effect. Like, where did that begin, and what made you want to put that much effort in, you know, to help everyone else?
well, there might be a bit of sort of survivor guilt, I suppose, but it's that, I managed to build myself a platform, um, and as a way of just sort of thinking, well, how can I give back to the community? That was one of the things that came up, and I know that I used to. I used to sort of like see these posts that came out, which was the top releases of no fantasy in November or whatever on Tor or BNN and those sorts of websites. And I'd always click on them, and if I was releasing a book, there would always be that little sort of like voice in my head just going, "Wouldn't it be nice if your book was on there?" And I mean, it never was because I was indie, and they were all trad. So I just thought, well, none of these posts that list upcoming books ever list indie because they're all for trad. So what if there was one for indie? And then it's just like, well, why don't I do it? I've already got a bit of a platform. It's not the biggest in the world, but it's a bit of a platform. So why don't I just start doing it? And it turned out it was something people really wanted, not just the authors, for that idea of, well, it's a way of trying to get their books in front of other people, which is great, but also to have that confidence boost of going on to one of these blogs and going, there's my book on this
Yeah,
list of upcoming
it's
fantasy.
there.
There he is. Um, but also for readers to find these books, because a lot of readers they do, like occasionally I see posts on like Facebook or Reddit or whatever saying, how do you find upcoming indie releases? Because it's all fun and well going, well, there's books releasing every day, but how do they find them? Um, so yeah, I just thought, well, there you go. Here's this post that I put out every single month and update throughout the month, which is these are the books that are releasing. I mean, it's far from comprehensive because there are like tens or dozens or hundreds, I don't know, books of fancy books releasing every single day. But it's mostly created by the people that get hold of me and tell me that their books are coming.
So I was going to say, how do you keep up with this? Is it just people that tell you? If you
Mostly, yeah.
it would be an impossible task to try and figure it out any other way.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
There are certain books I hear about naturally, like if Will White does release a book, I'm going to hear about it. Um,
The whole world knows. I don't think he needs a spot on that list. I think he's good.
well, no, but funnily enough, that I will always include like Will's books. I'll always include people like Michael J. Sullivan when he self-publishes a book and stuff like that as well, because it brings extra eyes on. If I could sit there and go, hey, look, there's a Michael J. Sullivan book on this list, it will bring extra people to look at it. And by that, they might see another book that they like the looks of. So it's simply by including the more well-known authors, it's a good way of getting extra eyes on it anyway. But yeah, most of it is just people letting me know that their books are coming, so I can put them on the list. Because otherwise, God, it's the same problem. Trying to find all these books that are releasing is just it's impossible. So yeah, if there are any authors listening and you are releasing a book, you can go to my website on www.robjhayes.co.uk and find the blog and tell me about your book that's coming, and I will feature it on the list.
There we go. Ever a marketer. See, he's learned. He's learned. See, it's not all been for nothing. That was smooth as butter. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, if you ever go to Amazon and you go to like, ebooks of some chart, no matter which chart, and you go to like the new stuff and it lists it by, it always puts the pre-order stuff first. So you can see books that are pre-ordered for like April 2023 all the way to now. And it's just pages and pages and pages. And that's just the pre-order stuff, never mind the stuff that just releases without pre-order.
yeah,
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't look at it very often because it's almost a bit like Lovecraftian and it's like eternal, just never ending. This like it's just there's so much stuff. It feels overwhelming. I actually um I don't know how I would find books these days as a regular reader. Everything that I pick up, I hear about through being a writer and being on Slack groups and various things. And you kind of, I'm picking stuff up to try because it's a friend or because I think it's doing very well. Well, yeah, I'm interested to see what the hype is about. But yeah, if I wasn't plugged in to the extent that I am, I don't know what I would do. I don't know where I would find things. It's so much information coming at you.
yeah.
It's like going on Netflix and you're scrolling and scrolling
God,
and
yeah,
you never find something, even though there's just unlimited stuff. It's choice of paralysis, right? You just cannot find it. You
yeah.
can't find something. Yeah.
When there's that much stuff as well, yeah, absolutely. That choice paralysis. You're just like, well, I could watch that, or I could just keep scrolling for the next hour.
And somehow we keep scrolling.
Yeah, but I mean, I think word of mouth is still actually the largest way of books getting to new readers, basically. Um, I know
Yeah,
certainly, like
I think so.
it's still the way that I pick most of my books to read. I mean, there's obviously this idea of okay, well, if I've read the first in the series, I'll probably read the next one or whatever. But yeah, word of mouth is still definitely it. I mean, I picked up Legends and Lattes by Travis is it Travis Baldry? Yeah.
Aldry.
Um, the other day, just because I heard so much about it. It was everywhere. So I thought, all right, let's give it a go. Turns out it was really good. And yeah, it was just simple word of mouth via social media these days, rather than sort of like people talking about it in person, I guess. But it's still word of mouth. So
Yeah, I think so. It's still it will put. I can't imagine anything beats it. I mean, we all try to appease the Amazon algorithm. That's important, but yeah, next best thing, or perhaps still the best thing, is that word of mouth.
yeah,
I always try
and
to. If anyone ever sends me a message, I always sort of end it with a. And please tell a friend. Please tell anyone who you think would enjoy it because that's the most helpful thing you could possibly do.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, talk about it. Yeah, I follow bloggers as well, actually. A bunch of bloggers who I listen to, like Petrick Leo is one of my favorites. I listen to all of his YouTube videos because I find so many good books via his recommendations, basically, that I otherwise maybe wouldn't even have heard of. So, yeah, they're sort of invaluable, both to readers and writers, I think.
Hmm. Slightly change of tack again. Of all your series, I'm wondering which one you're most proud of.
Um, I think that would probably be the War Eternal series. It has been it's been a struggle to write at times, and it deals very heavily with issues of sort of anxiety and depression, um, and for that sort of reason, it's very personal to me. So I think that's the one I'm most proud of because I think that I've done pretty well with it, and it means something. There's it's deeper than sort of like some of my other books that might be a bit more just sort of fun. Um, there's more to it, I think, and especially as it, the I had to rewrite the entire second book. Funnily enough, the first time I wrote the second book, it was absolute trash, and I knew it was trash, and I sent it to my beta readers, and they came back and went, "It's trash." Um, so I very nearly just binned the entire series because I thought, "Oh God, I've lost it." But I eventually gave it another go and wrote a book that was actually really good. If I
So
do say
completely
so.
from scratch. Just you just
Yep.
completely scrapped. Wow.
Well, I think it
That's
was
brave.
120,000 words or something like that, and I kept about 20,000 in all. So it was pretty much just scrapped the
Yeah,
entire thing.
essentially scrapped. What was it about? I mean, so what? Obviously, that's quite an intense subject matter, like you say. Like, what what was the spark of the idea that sort of that set you off on that path to delve into something quite so difficult to write about?
Well, I I deal with depression myself quite a bit, and my missus deals with some serious sort of anxiety issues. Um, so I think a lot of the reason I sort of wrote it was to help deal with them myself, basically, both the issues that I was having and sort of the issues that she was having. Um, and I think it's a way that helped me process what was going on. Just sort of like putting them down onto a page, onto the page, and putting them in a character really helped me process them and sort of deal with them in a healthy manner rather than sort of like descending into spirals of madness. Um, so I think that's where the sort of spark to originally focus the books around that came from. It's progressed since then, but yeah, that's where it definitely started from, I think.
A bit of write what you know, yeah.
Exactly, and that's how I think some of the best books come about. It's people writing about the experiences they've had, even if it's in like a fantasy setting. I seem to remember, who was it? Can't remember. It might have been Daniel Green, actually. I remember watching a video, I think it was of his, and he was basically saying like one of the best bits about fantasy is using these fantastic settings to shine lights on legitimate issues, but in a sort of hyperbolic way to really get the point across. So you can use the fantasy setting to accentuate them to really drive the issues that you're trying to get across home. Um, I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
just,
what really.
it's at its best, it's mythology, right? Which is all, sort of quasi-religious and full of symbolism and, everything else. And if you get it right, it strikes the right note. It just rings true, even if you can't quite grasp consciously why it's true. It's just that just works. It's like, you know, I saw a good video from who did this? What's his channel called? It'll escape me. Oh dear, that's really bad. One of those big YouTube writing channels, it will come back to me. But yeah, in the video about this exactly about you know symbolic stuff in fantasy writing, the magic and how that all becomes mythological. And just like one of the things you point out is, it seems obvious when you point it out, but until you think about it, like Harry Potter second book, with the basilisk. Basilisk is snake, and we have this inherent sort of evolutionary fear of snakes. We have this, that's the Garden of Eden thing and everything. And what happens when if you're really scared of something, if you're really, really scared, what you can fight, or you can run away, or you can just completely freeze. And what
Mm.
the basilisk freezes you, petrifies you. You're looking at something, the sheer like the sheer terror, and it freezes you. And then, so on and so forth, and Harry overcomes this by yada yada yada. But it was like, oh yeah, 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 of course that happened. Of course that's the way it is. But who knows whether she thought about that consciously, whether it's just sort of come out of the well of, collective memory or something like that. And
Yeah, I
when
mean,
you get it, when you get those things right, yeah, it really works. But it can be hard, I think, to consciously think about doing it. And I worry sometimes. I think if you do try it, you overthink it, and you twist yourself in knots trying to make something up like that. Whereas you need a little bit of a guiding instinct, right? But if that's what we're aiming for in many ways, right? It's that kind of uh, uh, a a truth, some kind of real thing that you are aware of, but you're not consciously aware of.
yeah, I think so, and I think that yeah, reaching for it can certainly be tough. But if you do it, I think that's what if you manage it and you manage it well, I think that's what can turn a book from sort of like good to great and meaningful on so many levels, that really matters to people and sticks with them. But at the same time, sometimes it's nice to just have popcorn fantasy, which is just fun. There's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with it.
The closer look, that's the channel. God, there you go. There you go.
It's annoying when
Someone's
you
looked
can't
that up.
quite. You're like, it's there,
Yeah,
but I can't quite think of
it
it.
was there. The closer look, very big writing channel. He's got many good videos actually, so highly recommend anyone to look those up. Um, yeah, popcorn fantasy. Yeah, what's been the best fantasy read you've gone through lately? Then, would you say what's been your favorite?
Oh, well, actually, at the moment, I'm rereading the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb
Oh yeah, hmm
because I the beginning of this year, I had I had like a string of DNFs, or books that I made my way through, but was just like, oh, I'm not really enjoying this. And it happens sometimes. Sometimes it's because the book doesn't gel with you. Sometimes it's because you're just not in the mood for what it's delivering, or sometimes the book's just bad. It's rare, but there we go. So I had a string of DNF, so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to read something that I know I love. And I haven't read the Farseer trilogy for 20 odd years now, and I had these really fancy illustrated hardback editions. So I thought, you know what, let's do it. Let's dive back into Fitz and his world, and I'm absolutely loving them again.
Because I
Um,
really love the first book. That first book is one of my favorites.
yeah. I actually think that the second book's a little bit better. I think the third book kind of drags a little bit because there's so much sort of like previously on Fitz, and
Mm.
hidden throughout the pages. Like occasionally, it will just go sort of into a 3-page synopsis of everything that's happened, and you'll be like, I know, I've been reading, just move on. Um, but I think generally the entire trilogy is just absolutely fantastic. Um, so that's what else. I've been listening to things. I'm listening to Eye of the World at the moment. Quite enjoying that. It's the first time ever actually experiencing Wheel of Time, which apparently it's quite a big book.
Quite a big deal. A few
It's
people
quite
have heard
good,
of that.
but I can see why it's counted as influential in so many other fantasy series and to so many other authors. I can see so many bits of it that I'm just like seeing that I have seen in other fantasy works. But at the same time, I can also see so much of Lord of the Rings in it. Like
Right,
it's
yeah.
quite clear that it took a lot of inspiration from Lord of the Rings.
I have to. I mean, I tried Eye of the World years ago on audio myself, and I didn't get into it then. I think it might be something I should read instead. Some books don't work for. I mean, I mostly listen to everything,
Mm.
but sometimes, whether it's the style of the book or the narrator, it just doesn't work. And I don't think it is necessarily the book's fault. Sometimes I think some books should be read and some should be listened to. So especially those really big ones, I might drift to trying it in paperback. Just give the first couple a go, see what the hype is about.
Yeah.
Like you say, 14 books seems a bit daunting, but
I
yeah,
know it does. I mean, I tried listening to Malazan as well, and I think that probably falls into the category of you want to read that rather than listen to
I think you want to read that because you need to reread everything about 10 times, right?
it. It was not the most pleasant listens. I was just like, I'm lost. I'm just going to keep going anyway. I would not recommend the audiobook,
All right.
but one day I'm going to pick up the paperback and give it a try that way.
Anything else good in audio?
Um, as I said, I listened to Legends and Lattes recently. That was really good. And only about 7 hours long, so it's quite a fast listen. But really well done. And then I'm listening to some Brandon Sanderson books. I just finished. Funnily enough, I just finished the fourth Alloy Mistborn book, whatever it is, Alloy of Law.
Right. Yeah.
Before
The
starting,
fir- yeah, the first Wax and Wayne one.
yeah,
Yeah.
before starting Wheel of the Time, and then after finishing Either World, and after finishing Eye of the World, I'm now going back to the first book, Mistborn. Is it?
Right.
Yeah, the first
Okay.
one in
So
six.
you did Ally of Law first?
Yeah.
Oh, that's mental. Oh, there's so many spoilers for the whole thing.
I have actually read the first trilogy, the first Mistborn trilogy before, but I'm doing as part of Petrick Leo's Discord group. I'm doing a readathon or a read along, yeah, of the first three books, and so I figured, okay, we'll do a listen along rather than a read along. Because I have no idea where my original like Mistborn trilogy books have gone. I bought them in paperback from a bookstore back when I used to go to bookstores, but I've got no idea where they've gone. Lost in the many moves.
That's one of my favorite trilogies. I listened to it, so I have them on audio, and I've listened to them twice on audio. And I had the paperbacks because Sanderson came to London for a signing. I don't know, 2015, 14, something like that. And it was for one of the Stormlight books. I think it was Stormlight 2. I think. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it was Stormlight 2. He was doing his tour. I just turned up with the Mistborn books. Like, can you just sign these, please?
I'd
Never
imagine
mind the
you
other
went
one.
alone.
Never mind the other thing. Yeah. um,
I know.
so I've got them
I
all
think
done.
I've listened to the Stormlight ones, and I think they're really good. Sanderson's one of those authors where you know what you're getting when you go into a Sanderson book. He has a set formula which he pretty much sticks to, but he knows it so damn well that you know you're going to get a good book. So
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, he's done something amazing in that. It's just that sense of trust. Like some authors have that, and sometimes you often are only as good as your last book. But he's just so consistent. People
yeah,
really trust that it's going to be good. Hence, why they will punt hundreds of dollars for 4 secret novels of which you know nothing about, because you can trust that it will be at least here. It might not be your
exactly.
favorite, but it's going to be. It's going to be. You're going to like it.
I don't think I've ever read or listened to a Sanderson novel and gone, "Oh my god, this is mind blowing, the best thing ever." But I do always go into them going, "This is a really good book, and I'm enjoying it." So I will admit I back the Kickstarter as well. I went for the audio level pledge because I tend to listen to his books these days.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
I am an audiophile, although my headphones are fine. It's my phone that's bust, so now everything's too quiet on via Bluetooth, and I can't fix it, and it's driving me nuts. I can't listen to anything. And when you're out, we're so like I don't know about you, but now I'm so used to running around with a podcast or something in my ears all the time. So if I don't have something speaking into my head, it feels really weird, and I'm
yeah,
like, it feels like wasted time. If I'm just walking about and nothing's like beating into my eardrums,
yeah,
it's kind of weird because this wasn't like even a few years back. This wasn't the case. I wasn't quite so obsessed with having the AirPods in all the time. It's become
yeah.
really
I mean,
habitual.
I've always been sort of when I'm out and about, I like to listen to music, sort of thing. It's only sort of like in the past few years that I've started listening to audiobooks and occasionally podcasts. But yeah, no, I completely get how you feel. There's been a few times where I've gone out and like I've not had my headphones in either because they I foolishly forgot to charge them and they're out of battery or something like that. And I've always sort of felt like, yeah, I need something else going on.
Yeah, it's probably not good. It's probably not healthy that we can't just sit in silence. But I don't know. Maybe I like to think it's fine. I'm listening to a lot of informative things, or so I like to think. That's my excuse. So, conscious of your time, Rob, I won't keep you for too much longer. But I class you as a veteran. I mean, 9 years is definitely veteran territory for this. Um, two things to finish up on. So, one would be what is the most what's been the most eye opening experience of this whole publishing journey so far? What's been the thing that's taken you back the most?
um, I think I don't know. I would say for personal experience, the thing that sort of impressed upon me most for indie publishing, at least, is the need for momentum. And because it's so different that in I think in the trad sphere you don't need to keep that momentum going quite so much, but in the indie sphere, it's this idea that if you sort of stop publishing, you disappear from the world. Um, it can be a hell of a lot harder to get going again. So I think that seeing so many of the big indie publishers these days take off, and they're doing it by just releasing, sort of like a book every sort of 6 months or so. And trying to get round to sort of getting your head into being able to do that is pretty tough. So I think that's been a bit of an eye opener. Is this idea of turning it into a sustainable business like that, and needing to keep that momentum going has been tough.
I agree. I'm a bit stunned by I don't know how people do that. Is basically why I'm flabbergasted by it.
Sort of
Just
releasing a
hit
book
that
every
kind.
6 months or so.
I mean, it's not even every 6 months. It's people that do it every 3 or 4 months, or they'll put out 3 books a year, and they're big. They're big books. They're not putting out little tiddly things. Like, I just don't know how they do it.
I don't either.
I have, yeah. It's the people
Mm,
that can sort of sit, they write it, and it's near enough perfect on the first run. Because I think if you're doing multiple books a year that are very large, and we know some people that do that, what you're writing pretty much has to be 95% there at the first pass, because otherwise you can't keep going back through it. You won't have the time. And they do it. And we hate them. But it's very impressive, and it just baffles me. I mean, all of those folks and their stamina, if
oh
nothing
yeah.
else.
How
Yeah.
how they managed to do it, like writing sort of, I don't know, 7 to 10,000 words a day without breaking down? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm delighted if I get to 1,500, I am delighted, and anything on top of that's like a bonus. That's kind of how treat it. So I get by. And if you could go back now before you launched that first book, launched that first series even, because it was the first series all in one day. Crazy. If you could go back, what was the one piece of advice that you would tell your past self that you wish you had known?
Ooh, one piece of advice: don't sign with indie publishing labels. No, I certainly learned that one the hard way. I don't know, just sort of have fun with it. Don't sort of like don't try and beat yourself up over sales or not getting enough done. Just have fun, and that because that's something that I've sort of been trying to learn myself over the past year. Is just to, yeah, enjoy it, enjoy the ride, and take time off as well. Because
Right?
I
Yeah.
kind of ran myself into the ground over the past year.
Yes, it's very easy for us to run ourselves into the ground, um, and we're not. I think I'm not. I always wonder this because I think, oh, will people do people just think of us as automatons? But if you ever put out a post where you say, "Hey, sorry guys, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm a bit behind. I'm having difficulties in the story or whatever." Usually, it's very, very positive. Everyone just says, "Take your time.
Yeah,
Make it good." It's everything that we put on ourselves. In our search for perfection that drives us down. But so yeah, yeah, I think that's a good piece of advice. Take some breaks and try to enjoy it. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
exactly. I'm on another podcast or a podcast called Wizards, Warriors, and Words, and we actually did an episode called "The Search for Steve," and Steve was the stand-in for just happiness. So the entire podcast was just about how to actually be happy.
Did you find them? Did you find Steve?
No, we talked around the issue a lot, but nobody actually knew where the fuck Steve was.
It sounds like you've got to go back and find them.
Yeah,
Otherwise, yeah,
it's a continuing struggle to find Steve.
absolutely. Well, on that lovely note, I'll call it there. It is quite late in the UK, but thanks very much for coming along and chatting to me tonight. It's been great to kind of finally meet you, sort of face to face, so to speak.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for having me, and hopefully we'll actually get a face to face. And I think we're both going to Bristol, BristolCon, aren't we?
yeah. That's my plan. So hopefully see you there.
Yes, we'll have to have a beer in the bar, as it is known as
Absolutely.
BarCon for a reason.
It is known as Barcon for a reason, and I very look forward to it. So until then, good luck with the writing. We'll see you
Cheers.
all at the next interview. Bye, guys.